Oscar-winning filmmaker Davis Guggenheim, actor, model, and now director Nyle DiMarco are teaming up for this great documentary, Deaf President Now. So Nyle, tell us how you came across this story and wanted to make it as a documentary.
Excellent question. Deaf President Now is so much a part of my community's history. Coming from a deaf family myself, actually fourth generation, this is a story that is passed down not so much as an oral history, but sort of hand-to-hand, generation to generation. I remember my mom telling me about it when I was around 7 and knowing this story, hearing about it in the community, but when I spent a year at a public school in 5th grade, no one learned about it. And this felt like really important history. It gave rise to the passage of the ADA. I was kind of shocked that, at such a young age, people weren't learning it. So it's always been really top of mind that this story should be shared with a larger audience, certainly considering how strong and important of a civil rights movement it was. I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to be able to tell it, and especially next to Davis Guggenheim, it's incredible.
I mean, it's so incredible. Davis, you were behind some of the biggest documentaries recently. In Inconvenient Truth, He Named Me Malala, the Michael J. Fox movie. These are just so great. And now we're going to add Deaf President Now to this. What about these legacies of these documentaries? Deaf President Now has to fit right in there with the rest of them.
We screened the movie in New York 2 nights ago, and everybody came out saying, boy, do I need this movie right now. And I'm drawn to stories where you can meet people you've never met before and you start to believe in them. Now, these characters happen to be deaf, but they are people who are thrust into a position and become leaders before your eyes in just a matter of weeks. What's very special about this movie is it's a movie about deaf culture told by a deaf director and a guy who's helping him. I feel like on this project, I'm more of a midwife. This is Nyle's baby. He went to Gallaudet. This is his idea. And I'm here, having seen a lot of births before, helping him deliver this movie to the world.
It's such a beautiful partnership between the two of you. And Nyle, this is obviously a documentary, but what was the decision in your mind to want to make this story as a documentary versus a feature film, which it seems a lot of Hollywoodism goes that way, but it's so great that this is in documentary format.
Yeah, actually, it's all thanks to this guy, because it actually started as a scripted project, but we were struggling with the limitations that a script provides. And Deaf President Now wasn't just a protest, with the goal of appointing a deaf president, but it was deep and nuanced and spoke to the years of oppressive dynamics that we had been up against for generations. And when I first actually approached Davis about it, he said, this is got to be a documentary, which is wonderful. And when we reached out to Gallaudet, we were very lucky to find they had over 40 hours of archival footage. We just immediately knew that it was going to be best served in this space.
Fits so perfectly in this space. I mean, you have the Gallaudet Four that are central to this. Jerry, Brigetta, Tim, Greg. I mean, they are so impactful, sharing their stories, seeing them in these archival footage pieces. What is that like, Davis, to get to work alongside these people rather than just having to retell a story without those central people?
Well, I come to this story ignorant, to be honest. I don't know American Sign Language. I don't know the culture very well. Sometimes that's a good thing in the sense that you're kind of like, well, I'm fresh to this. I can help the audience learn what I have just learned. But other ways, I thought I knew a lot, and now 2 years later, I feel like I know even less. But what I found with these characters are just good people who were put into this situation, and they found a way to speak clearly about who they were to the world, and the world began to listen. And often we see these student protests, and they're so angry, and they're finger pointing, and you realize that these people will never ever understand or be able to even humanize the other side. So I think audiences will see this movie and say, oh, we've forgotten something about what it means to fight for what we believe in. We've forgotten how to protest in an effective way. And if people watch this movie, it's like a blueprint for how to do that again.
That's such a great way to put that. I mean, this happened 37 years ago, but fighting for people's rights, fighting for civil rights is still just as impactful today. Niall, what do you hope people take away after watching Deaf President Now?
You know, several things, but to choose one, I think given how timely this story is, we're seeing so many protests around the world and on college campuses, but central within those is the polarization. Folks are coming to the table with a difference of opinion and disagreements that they seem to not be able to get past. I would hope that people seeing this film would understand that protest is in fact possible. It's possible to be successful, and you don't have to get along with those that you protest with. But I think our film speaks to the power of collective action in reaching sort of that larger goal. I would hope that people would be inspired and have a renewed sense of excitement about it.
Thank you so much for sharing the story. Audiences will certainly be inspired when they watch Deaf President Now, May 16th on Apple TV+. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm talking to the Gallaudet for. They are so impactful, so great in this new documentary, Deaf President Now. So I'm going to start with Tim. Tell us what you remember most about those protests back in 1988.
Well, I remember at that time thinking, we don't have a deaf president. There were 2 deaf candidates and a third one that was hearing, and they chose that one over the other 2? What? I thought during that week at that time, we were just going to get someone replaced with a deaf president. It was time for that. Didn't know how soon, but it was more than just having a deaf president. It was about having rights, equal access, self-worth, a sense of self-empowerment, all of those things. That week, wow.
You're so right about that. And Jerry, you are this radical, charismatic figure at this time, trying to rally the people of this school, of these people. And what was that emphasis to get to be the kind of the forefront, be that change, make sure this is an impact that is going to be felt?
Really, that week was just surprising because so many people came together for the protest. We thought it would be maybe the 4 of us and that would be it. But there were 50 people, and the whole campus got involved and they came out for this protest. So, people typically, I say I'm the person who likes to stir the pot, but apparently I still do stir the pot to this day, but that's what I did.
Love to hear that. Stir that pot. And Brigetta, I mean, you're a feminist. You're a very, very powerful woman. I love to see that on screen. This is a female president who is elected at the time, but she's not deaf. She's not part of this community. So it's kind of a hit and miss for your stance or movement, I want to say. What's going through your head is you see one good side of it, but then you also see the bad side of it as well.
Weeks before all of that, I had taken a feminist course here at the university, and I always believe that women can do it. I always have had that instilled. I have to thank my dad, really. My dad believed in the 4 daughters he had to instill that in us. So I was always of that mindset. And in 124 years, Gallaudet never had a deaf president, never had a female president. So right before that time, the 4 of us, we were all in the same class. We were on the student body government, all these things. The 4 of us we were big players in. We would always joke amongst each other. And I remember when I was in college, it might be silly now, but I remember back in the day, they would open the door for me and I would say, so you're looking at me as a girl, you're looking at me differently, you opened the door for me, why are you doing that? I mean, that's how I used to talk. And anyway, fast forward, as we got closer, when we were looking at, deaf boys and men, they would come up to me. I learned later that they did have a conversation amongst themselves and they said, we've got to convince that girl. And at the time, I didn't know that. I learned about this much later. Apparently, I was very stubborn. And, I was very strong-willed and believed women can do it. And so all these men and boys would come up to me, Jerry, I remember in government class, he said, enough, it's time for deaf now, deaf president now. And I said, wait a minute, what about a woman president? And so then as time went on, I evolved my perspective on that. I looked at the bigger picture and I looked at, what does this university need? This is a university for deaf people. This is not a university for deaf women. It's not. So I had to take a step back and, kind of change that and really focus. And like I said, it made more sense to get a deaf president. Thank you so much for that question.
And now we have a deaf woman president.
Now we have a deaf woman president, yeah.
Right. So it took, 35 years? Yes, 35 years, something like that. And now we finally have a deaf woman president. Not like a finally,
30.
come on. But it's been a nice, long transition over the years. And it's just come time where, through progression, it's time to have a deaf female president.
It's full circle for you in that moment. And Greg, we have a documentary like this. We have Nyle DiMarco, who co-directed it, winner of America's Next Top Model, winner of Dancing with the Stars. We have Coda winning Best Picture recently. It is so great to see these people, these movies, these influences in the deaf community. What do you hope people take away from watching this documentary?
First of all, I think let's just emphasize how small the deaf world is. I've known Nyle since he was a very small boy. I know his mother. She and I went to school together. She was a cheerleader I looked up to. I kind of had a crush on Nile's mom, to be honest with you, back in the day. We're both from New York. When Nyle approached me about the idea of producing this film, I 100% was on board from the get-go, and I knew that Nyle was going to be able to pull all the strings to make it work, and he did. And what I see now, the takeaway that people should have with this film is the emphasis that deaf people are capable of doing anything, and that what we often think of as impossible, by itself, you might accept that, but you can make the possible out of the impossible. And that's what I hope people will take from that, especially many young deaf people who are isolated out there as they grow up, that they don't have the type of deaf community surrounding them like I had and like we had in 1988. The deaf community is actually in some ways more isolated today. And they're at a level of complacency in some respects where they've gotten all these opportunities and rights, but they're no longer fighting for them and they could be taken away. So this film is that we can't take it for granted. We need to continue to fight for our rights, and we need to maintain these rights as deaf people and maintain that capability. So this film is about preserving what we have and moving forward into the future.
It's such an important documentary. Deaf President now on Apple TV Plus May 16th. Thank you all so much for sharing your story.